The Money Show. Personal finance.
So we heard the budget last week, and there was a lot of discussion about what was in it and why it matters and how it affects you, why it is that a bottle of spirits suddenly is about to become more expensive and all of those things. I've also heard, and we did some of the highlights of why it matters to you in terms of your longer-term planning, but as far as I know, we have not heard anyone do what I think is needed, which is a proper in-depth kind of deep dive into how this really is going to affect your retirement over the years. And I'm pleased to tell you that Thabo Hollo, the program manager at Old Mutual Financial Education's agreed to take us through it all. And of course, if you've got questions for Thabo, it'd be great to hear from you on 072 702 1702 as well. You can call too on 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567. Thabo Hollo, good evening, and thanks so much for agreeing to speak to us about all of this tonight.
Good evening, Stephen, and thanks for the opportunity, and good evening to your listeners.
So a lot of this is to do basically with avoiding tax, right? Or evading. I always get those two muddled up, and one day I'm going to end up in court as a result. So let's just start with a retirement fund, something we probably all kind of understand. Retirement contribution limits. How does that work? What does that mean?
Let's start with this. We hope people don't avoid tax, Stephen.
Yes.
We hope we can find a way to optimize the way we pay our tax. But in terms of the retirement, the bands have been shifted a little bit, Stephen, in terms of the cutoffs, right? The previous limit, for instance, in terms of retirement deductions was around 350,000. And that has been moved to 430,000 effectively. Right, and that kind of helps us because it impacts in terms of the income side of it. So we are able to look at how much will be exempted in terms of taxation before you start getting taxed on your income. And a typical example, for instance, we are allowed to get our income up to 27.5% as our deduction, right? And if you look at what that 27.5 means, is if, for instance, you earn up to R1 million, and yes, we do have people that earn up to R1 million, so that amount is around about 275,000 rand that doesn't get taxed. And then you start getting taxed from that 725. So which is a significant saving if you look at it that way. So yes, that movement is significant. And it does make a difference in terms of the longer term view in terms of your savings.
I was fascinated by it's such a big change, 350,000 to 430,000, and I still don't quite understand why the National Treasury made such a big change to this. I mean, clearly what they do want to do is they want to encourage you and I to save.
Here's the thing. The reality is we're not a nation of great savers, and that's the reality. There's not a lot of us that are saving sufficiently to retire comfortably post our economically active life, right? Our waking life. So the whole idea and the spirit is to encourage us, is to incentivize us to save more in terms of our retirement. So that come the time where we are off the working age, then we can start enjoying that retirement. So it makes it's only prudent, and it makes absolute sense for the Treasury to say, look, let's incentivize people to save a bit more. And if you look at it from an individual tax saving, at least from a tax saving point of view, it makes absolute sense that you should take advantage of that bracket change.
Okay, so is there a difference between someone earning, say, around R1 million a year and someone earning a lot more than that in this case?
There is, unfortunately. If you look at it, for instance, we took an example of somebody that earns R1 million, right? Who's going to be taxed at least on a 725,000. That is, if they were to take advantage of the maximum 27.5%. Allowable, right? But if you look at somebody that earns, let's say, just upwards of, let's say, 2 million rands, the cap will not change. The cap will still be at 430,000, right? So the deduction will be based on that 430,000, and you start the taxation at 1.5 from about million rands. So there's still a significant amount, yes, in terms of savings that you can enjoy, but the taxation will differ significantly in terms of those that get higher in terms of the income bracket.
Okay, then tax-free investment accounts. How do they work? They're not something that I've actually discussed very often, a tax-free investment account.
Stephen, if I had it my way, I would make everybody take advantage of the tax-free investment account, because it's such a simple product that actually works, right? And the difference is, if you were to save, let's say using any other form of savings instrument or product or account, right? You get taxed on the interest end. But in this case, you have a significant savings in terms of the amount that is exempt from taxation. We know that previously in the previous years, the cutoff in terms of the amount that you can save annually was around about 36K, and that has changed to 46,000 rands, with a significant shift in terms of the cap over a long period. So if you were to look at a product such as that, it allows you to actually put a money aside. And yes, again, we are not a nation of savings, and this is one of those instruments or tools that you can use to save on a regular basis. And again, just to deviate a little bit, Stephen, savings is not just about money. It's not about how much you earn. It's a behavioral thing. And the best time to start saving is immediately. Start small. Start with what you can afford, right? And build on that. But do consider a tax-free savings account.
What happens if you go past the limit? I mean, do you suddenly find yourself having to be taxed on just the difference, on the whole thing?
And unfortunately, you will get taxed on the difference. So there is a limit that is kept. But yes, you will get taxed, unfortunately, on the difference. But if you consider the upside is that much greater in terms of the incentives of savings without necessarily losing the bulk of what you've saved.
Okay, most of the time when we sort of manage tax and income, we're doing it for individuals. Is there an opportunity here for families in some way?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the family units are made up of individuals within that family unit, right? And you can take advantage of that by creating individual pockets in terms of savings. As a unit, yes, but then consider the savings at an individual level, such that your overall household savings increases that much by considering yourselves as individuals. So absolutely, there is an upside in saving as a family compared to just lumping everything in one pot.
Is it that different from other savings accounts? I mean, it seems to have something that's different to it.
But again, like I said, if I had personally had to choose, this will be the easiest. Yes, absolutely, because you do get taxation on other savings tools, right? And this is one that is specifically created not to attract a tax, at least up to a certain level, up to a certain limit. And even in the way it is constructed, right? It's one of those products that are easy to buy. It's easy to manage, and they're fairly flexible. Of course, we don't like people putting money and dipping into the savings. Ideally, you want to put savings over a longer period. But it's one of those tools, or at least the savings product, that are easy to manage. And if you were to compare, yes, of course, it differs from person to person, and in many instances, not an either or, depending on what you want to save for or what you want to invest for. You might choose a different product, but this is one of those ideal products that are fairly flexible in terms of how they are managed. And I know a whole lot of people that are advocates of this product.
Are there particular ways to get the most out of it? I mean, I imagine I can just see how people can spend some time sort of gaming it in a way.
The easiest, I imagine, Stephen, is to start. That's the first thing. Start.
Yeah.
Start as early as possible. For instance, if the parents that have kids, teach them to start saving at a very early age. Just build that savings muscle. And this is one of those products that you can use. That's the first thing. Secondly, be consistent. So if you were to ask me in terms of the approach when it comes to saving, save the money that you can actually afford to save on a regular basis. If you're a weekly earner, save on a weekly basis. If you're a monthly earner, save on a monthly basis. But then be consistent. And as and when you are able to increase your savings amount, take advantage of that. And if you have things like windfall, there's others that will get 13th check or bonuses, consider saving that. But most importantly, avoid making unnecessary withdrawals. And I know that some of these products are fairly flexible, that they allow you, but you're depleting the value that you could get if you were to look at the value of compounding. So be consistent, start early, avoid unnecessary withdrawals, and have some sort of time horizon in mind, right? Stay the course. Stay the course with what you want to achieve, and stay disciplined. But most importantly, start.
Thabo, we've had a few messages coming through, and just on the point of not touching the major amount, the principal. Kholi says, Stephen, coming from our history, retirement seems to be the worst period of my life, and many others say so. You have millions sitting there while life is not kind, and I presume what they're saying is that you have millions sitting in the retirement account, but you can't actually touch it when you need it. And this, I think, is coming from someone who's already retired. And I have to say, I can understand that frustration.
I can understand that. I must be honest. I can't identify, but I can understand what they're talking about. But remember, in terms of retirement, you try as much as you possibly can to maintain the standard of life that you had whilst you were still economically active. And that's the point behind retirement. It's not to be dependent, for instance, on others, or dependent or having to prolong your period of working unnecessarily. So yes, there might be money that's sitting somewhere and you are unable to withdraw the entire money. But the whole point behind retirement is to be able to at least maintain some semblance of what you had as a lifestyle that is similar to what you had when you were still actively involved. So patience, I would urge.
Yeah. Soraya has got in touch saying, Stephen, hi, this is Soraya. The biggest elephant in the room in retirement funds is that you get taxed every month on your payout. Why is a pension termed as income? In your most vulnerable years, you're still taxed despite contributing until you're 65. She says. I mean, I can imagine that frustration too.
I can imagine that frustration, and indeed. You would ideally don't want to be taxed, but if you talk to your tax consultants, for instance, there's ways and means of making sure that you optimize your tax affairs. I am not saying you should avoid tax, but talk to tax experts so that your income is that much optimized. That is the best way to go about it. You can't avoid it, unfortunately.
Soraya and Kholi, thanks very much indeed. A reminder, of course, 072-702-1702. Thabo, the tax-free savings account and retirement annuities, I mean, which would be better? And I suppose they have slightly different things, but which would be the best one to make contributions to?
In my world, I would say it's not an either-or. The two products can actually work as complementary products. Remember, when it comes to the retirement, you're looking beyond your economically active life, right? And when it comes to tax-free, you could use it for your short and mid-term kind of savings. And yes, you can extend it to a longer term. So if you were to ask me, it's not an either-or. I would rather you look at the two products as complementary products, but most importantly, use your tax-free as almost like a buffer product that you can still access. Remember, I know that, for instance, in terms of the two-pot system, you still have some sort of sense of being able to access part of the money. My sense is leave it there. Let it work for your retirement. But use your tax-free or your short-term and mid-term savings products as your buffers for now in case of emergencies, in case of specific goals. So it's not an either-or in terms of the choice between the two products. is mostly as complementary products.
Speaking to Thabo Hollo, the program manager for Old Mutual Financial Education, about some of the changes that we've seen in tax allowances and all the rest in the budget for your retirement. You suggest, Thabo, that we should consider the tax-free savings account and a retirement annuity as complementary to each other. When you start, how would you invest in your TFSA, your tax-free savings account? How should you start that process?
So my advice would be approach your trusted financial services provider, whether it's a banking institution. I know banks do offer the product, or an insurance provider. Most of insurers do provide the product. But most importantly, your first step, Stephen, is speak to your financial advisor. So structure your budget, for instance, your finances accordingly. Don't just go in and buy a product before you understand, one, how it works, the mechanics, what are you going to get, what are your obligations, etc., etc. So if you were to ask me, I would say start with talking to your financial advisor in terms of structuring your finances. Look into your budgeting and say, what can I earn, what can I not afford, and how much can I afford in terms of savings. Remember the magic formula, the 50-30-20 rule, that 20% that talks to savings and your debt. Make sure that it falls within that. It's something that you can afford. But as a first step, speak to your financial advisor and try to understand the different institutions and what they offer and what would be suitable for you and your family.
Thabo, we've got voice notes coming through this evening on 072 702 1702.
My pension that I got paid out 10 years ago is now only worth, in buying power, a third of what it was 10 years ago as a result of inflation. So people must always keep that in mind. Don't think what you get out, unless you have one of those living annuities that sort of carry on and give you an increase, or a government pension that gives you an increase. But otherwise, better be sure that you have an additional retirement annuity to your pension. Just a pension won't be enough anymore. Thanks for a lovely show. Bye.
Thanks. That's from Selma, Thabo. And this is the issue, really. Isn't this always the problem? What we're fighting constantly here is inflation.
There's a massive issue, and it's not just in terms of retirement, but even in the current state, we should always be conscious of inflation. Even in our structuring our finances, we should also factor the issue of inflation. And yes, sometimes it's tempting to lowball a number and say, look, we're hoping that the inflation will always stay at between 3 and 6%. The best thing is to work with the worst and hope for the best. So yes, absolutely, it does have an impact on your savings, unfortunately. But then just at the beginning, we should be conscious of that. And as we structure our finances, as we talk to our financial advisors, be conscious of the fact that inflation is a reality. And if we lowball the amount that we are saving, the likelihood is the replacement value will also be affected in terms of what inflation looks like. So let's talk to the youth that are getting into work now. Start thinking about this. Let's talk about those that are mature in the environment of work and those that are saving. Be conscious of the rate of inflation and what it can do in terms of your retirement.
We also, we're getting a lot of messages for you tonight, Thabo. Natasha's asking now, the best way, how would you save? Because I can save on a non-tax-free savings account. Let me put it in her words. She says, when I look at a savings account, what is the best way to save? A tax-free account or a savings account where I can save on a non-tax-free savings account where I'll have to pay tax, where the growth is long-term? And she's been looking at certain things from different institutions. I think where she's going is that when you get paid out, you end up having to pay tax anyway.
Yeah. I like the fact that she's already considering. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Secondly, I love the fact that she's studying different things and personalizing it, because what works for Stephen might not necessarily work for Thabo. And if she looks at it and say, I wanna defer the taxation and pay, then absolutely, so long as there's savings involved in that. But my personal favorite will still remain unfortunately the tax-free savings policy, because there's an upside to it. But to every other person, the first thing is understand what you're getting yourself into. Get as much information as you possibly can. Yes, it's okay to do your own searches on search engines, but I think the best thing is to sit with somebody that's qualified, who can run the numbers for you and give you different scenarios and say, if you go to option A, this is what the tax implication would look like. If you go for option B, this is what the difference would look like. Such that when you make a decision, you at least make an informed decision, not just an emotional decision, but something that will make sense for you as a person, but let it be considered. So I love the way she's approaching it in terms of getting as much information, and including the institution. Shop around. Look at what institution A gives you compared to institution B, and choose the institution that makes sense to you.
We've got 30 seconds left. You can use these as parents to save for education for your kids as well, hey?
Best thing ever, because you can hedge. Remember, education also has an inflation factor into it. But start now. You can use your tax-free savings account as some sort of a hedge to say, put money aside, and over a longer period, you can use that money for your children's education. Absolutely, we have to invest in kids, but we have to make those decisions now. Start now.
Thabo, been great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Thabo Hollo is the program manager for the Old Mutual Financial Education, joining us on Personal Finance this evening. So many different ways to understand the options that are available to you. And as he says, as Thabo says, and you know, as Warren would say, as John would say, start now. Go and do the research and start now. Really does pay off. Now, Thabo, really enjoyed that. Thank you very much indeed.